Hello everybody, we're going to hit you up with another presidential election. This one, the election of 1864. We are right smack dab in the middle of the Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln going to go for the second term. Can he get it done in the middle of this war? We're going to find that out right now. Now, as always, we're going to start off with the incumbent party, and that is the Republican Party. Abraham Lincoln, the incumbent president when the Civil War begins. And in 1864, the Civil War is still going on, but the Civil War getting close to an end. And there is a temporary split in the Republican Party. A group of Republican dissidents who call themselves Radical Republicans formed the party named the Radical Democracy Party, and they nominated John C. Fremont, who was the Republican nominee in 1856, as their candidate for president. Now, Fremont's eventually going to withdraw from the race and support Lincoln. So, war Democrats and Republicans, they form a coalition, so to speak, and instead of running as the Republican Party, a National Union Party is created, and this is a temporary name used to attract war Democrats and border state Unionists who would not vote for the Republican Party. So this National Union Party is going to put up two candidates, the incumbent president, Lincoln, and General Ulysses S. Grant. Both of these guys are from Illinois, and at the end of the day, it is going to be Lincoln who receives the nomination. So Abraham Lincoln running for re-election, not as a Republican, but on this National Union ticket. Now, this National Union Party also putting up their candidates for vice president. Those candidates being the incoming vice president, Hannibal Hamlin of Maine, Tennessee's Andrew Johnson, Benjamin Butler of Massachusetts, New York's Daniel Dickinson, and Kentucky's Lavelle Rousseau. And at the end of the day, it is going to be Andrew Johnson who is nominated for vice president. Andrew Johnson, at this point, the military governor of Tennessee, and he is a Democrat. But Johnson was one of the few senators, one of the few Southern members of Congress that remained with the Union when their state seceded. So when Union forces take control of Tennessee, Lincoln rewards Johnson for his loyalty by making him the state's military governor. And they put out a platform. Lincoln, by the way, is still popular with most members of the Republican Party, and their platform includes in part pursuit of the war until the Confederacy surrendered unconditionally, a constitutional amendment for the abolition of slavery, aid to disabled Union veterans, continued European neutrality, enforcement of the Monroe Doctrine, encouragement of immigration, and construction of a transcontinental railroad. It also praised the use of black troops and Lincoln's management of the war. During Lincoln's first term in office, the Emancipation Proclamation was made as an executive order by Lincoln, which stated that all slaves in the rebellious states were now free. He didn't want to free them in the border states because he knew that the border states would get so ticked off that they might end up joining the Confederacy. So it was only the rebellious states. Now that we have our National Union Party, let's head on over to the Democrats. Now, the Democrats themselves are also going to deal with a pretty big split, and that is between war Democrats and peace Democrats. War Democrats obviously wanted the war to continue. Peace Democrats wanted the war to end and a peace be made with the South. Now, these peace Democrats were further divided among moderate peace Democrats who supported the war against the Confederacy, such as Horatio Seymour, remember that name, were preaching the wisdom of a negotiated peace. After the Union victory at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, moderate peace Democrats proposed a negotiated peace that would secure Union victory. They believed this was the best course of action because an armistice could finish the war without devastating the South. Now we also have radical peace Democrats. They were also known as Copperheads, and they declared the war to be a failure and favored an immediate end to hostilities without securing Union victory. The Democrats are putting up their candidates for president: George B. McClellan of New Jersey, one of Lincoln's generals, and Thomas H. Seymour of Connecticut. At the end of the day, it's going to be McClellan that receives the presidential nomination. McClellan is a war Democrat. He was for the continuation of the war. And the Democrats end up adopting a peace platform that McClellan personally rejected, as he supported, as I've said, continuation of the war and restoration of the Union, but he goes with it anyway. For vice president, he's going to bring along for the ride George H. Pendleton, a peace Democrat, a congressman from Ohio, as his running mate. He's going to fend off opposition from Indiana Congressman Daniel W. Voorhees, George W. Cass of Pennsylvania, and Augustus C. Dodge of Iowa. Now that we have our National Union Party, and now that we have our Democratic Party, let's put these guys into the ring, Lincoln and McClellan, and see who comes out on top. Now, one thing to note here, this election is the first election since 1812 to take place during a war. There's going to be one more election that takes place during a war, and that's 1944. Now, for much of 1864, Lincoln himself believed that he had little chance of being elected. Confederate forces had triumphed at battles such as Mansfield, the Crater, and Cold Harbor. In addition, the war was continuing to take a very high toll in terms of casualties. So the prospect of a long and bloody war started to make the idea of peace at all costs offered by the Copperheads, remember these peace Democrats, these radical peace Democrats, look more desirable. Both Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, and Abraham Lincoln thought that this war would only go on for a few months, but early on into the war, they came to realize that, hey, we need to be prepared for a prolonged war. And the American people was tired of the war. And because of this, McClellan was thought to be a heavy favorite to win the election. And unfortunately for Lincoln, Fremont's campaign, remember, nominee of the Radical Democracy Party, got off to a good start. However, several political and military events eventually made Lincoln's re-election inevitable. Now, firstly, the Democrats had to confront the severe internal strains within their party at their national convention, and their political compromises made there were contradictory and made McClellan's efforts to campaign seem inconsistent. Now, secondly, the Democratic National Convention influenced Fremont's campaign. Fremont was appalled at the Democratic platform, which he described as union with slavery. After 3 weeks of discussions with Cochrane, who was his running mate, that Cochrane we're talking about here was Fremont's running mate for a time, and he was another general, General John Cochrane of New York. So after having a talk with Cochrane, who was his running mate, and other supporters, he decides to withdraw. And in his statement, he declared that winning the Civil War was too important to divide the Republican vote. Although he still felt that Lincoln was not going far enough, the defeat of McClellan was of the greatest necessity. General Cochrane, he was a war Democrat, and he agreed and withdrew with Fremont. Fremont also brokered a political deal in which Lincoln removed Postmaster General Montgomery Blair from his position, and so therefore McClellan's chances of victory pretty much faded. And what did it in for McClellan was the fall of Atlanta. The fall of Atlanta on September 2nd, and Sherman's march to the sea made it no question that a Union victory was inevitable. The Civil War was going to end, and Lincoln was going to win this election. And at the end of the day, the Union Party mobilized the full strength of both the Republicans and the War Democrats under its slogan, "Don't change horses in the middle of a stream." It was energized as Lincoln made emancipation the central issue, and state Republican parties stressed the perfidy of the Copperheads. It was feared that if McClellan became president, that he would repeal the Emancipation Proclamation. But do you remember, McClellan was for the end of the war. Remember, McClellan was for the continuation of the war, and the restoration of the Union. And with that in mind, let's get to the results. Now, this is going to be a drumbling for the Democratic Party. Abraham Lincoln becomes the first president since Andrew Jackson to be elected to a second term. He's going to win 212 electoral votes, and he's going to carry every state but Kentucky, New Jersey, and Delaware. McClellan carries those states, which only amounts out to 21 electoral votes. Now, Lincoln also carries the states of Tennessee and Louisiana, Confederate states that were under Union control, but despite that, no Southern votes were counted in this election. So it was purely Union states that remained in the Union, that had their electoral votes counted. In terms of the popular vote, it's 55% for Abraham Lincoln and 45% for General McClellan. Andrew Johnson's going to be elected vice president, and he is actually going to give a rambling speech at the inauguration because he was actually drunk when this happened. So this scratched a lot of heads in Washington, but unfortunately Lincoln is not going to last long in his second term, and I'll tell you why next time in the election of 1868. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, go ahead and watch those. I hope you get a lot out of these, and with that, we will see you next time.